being the fastest quarterback you've never seen. I'll be right back. There's no quicker way to get into DFS. Play Super Draft today and see for yourself.
We're behind. They're all fired up. What we got to do? First place, our defense has got to go out there and take the ball. Then when we get the ball, we got to have 11 people that's going to do their job and try to score every time you get the football. If we do that, we'll be all right. If we do that, we'll be all right.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's Monday. It is another edition of Football University with me, Matt Cadell, on the CTS Sports Room. Hope everybody had a happy Father's Day weekend. All the people who are off for Juneteenth celebration, happy Juneteenth. But listen, happy Monday. Welcome to Football University again. I'm so excited. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. We talk about everything football at the university, and we find a way to bring it back to Alabama. So RTR to all the Bama fans in the student section. Shouts out to 6-0 in the student section. RTR. Listen, we got a great show. We're going to discuss everything. Big news. Alabama football 2024 schedule. SEC news. We're kind of going to get into it. And let's start it. Please hit that like, subscribe button, or just tell somebody how great you like the show. It's a way to get your Monday started. So let's start and let's dive right into it. My first topic. So RTR, the biggest news this past week was the SEC schedule release for the 2024 schedule. And I got to say, looking at the schedule release, Alabama, the University of Alabama is still the kings of the SEC. I think they have the toughest slate when it comes to the 2024 schedule. We lose the Mississippi schools. We lose Ole Miss as well as Mississippi State, and we gain Georgia, which is going to be a big game, South Carolina. We play Oklahoma as well. So, I feel like looking at the schedule release, just initial reaction, I thought the SEC did a great job with the schedule release, building some excitement. But Alabama, man, listen, I'm so excited about this SEC schedule. So, I think, a lot of people say Alabama has the tougher schedule, which, I have no issue with. But listen, RTR, it's just how it is. We love going through the tough roads. We still get to keep those big, important games, the Auburn game, the Iron Bowl, the Tennessee game, obviously, with the Vols, and the LSU game. I think we're one of the few SEC teams that kind of kept, the really tough schedule. So The SEC schedule release, listen, not playing the Mississippi teams was interesting, and that Georgia matchup is gonna be so interesting. So let's pause right there and let's get to the student section. So let's go to the some of our some of our comments. Listen, Jeff Stapleton says Texas and Oklahoma coming to dinner in the SEC. Yes, listen, the SEC is no joke. You know, in 2024, you know, we get the addition of Texas and Oklahoma coming from the Big 12. We've already played Texas in Austin. They come to Tuscaloosa this year, which I cannot wait. But Oklahoma, listen, welcome to the SEC. We know we're glad to have you, but you're gonna get this chicken, as they say in the SEC, with your schedule. Having to play Alabama. I don't know if that game's gonna be on the road officially yet, but you know, it got me thinking with the SEC schedule. To your point, Stephen Hicks, like I love that the SEC goes through Alabama, and Alabama tends to have the toughest road. To me, that's what separates UA from all the other schools in the SEC. We're still the kings of the SEC. But listen, Alabama, I don't know about the schedule, you know, which games are going to be on the road, which games are going to be away, but I'm still excited. You know, the Alabama is ready. To your point, Linda P. Bama, it ain't scared. Bring it. Yes, Bama is not scheduled. Is not scared. Concerning our schedule. So shouts out to Van L. Shouts out to the student section. So about our schedule, I want to get to, you know, playing at Oklahoma. I want to pause with that Oklahoma point. Go back to Jeff Stapleton point. Listen, playing Oklahoma, we know the history we have with Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts specifically, will this be called the Jalen Hurts Bowl? Like, listen, Alabama versus Oklahoma, you know, who is Jalen Hurts going to pull for? You know, that can kind of be interesting dynamic. You know, it made me think like, wow, you know, will Alabama travel to Norman, Oklahoma? And who will Jalen Hurts be pulling for, and who would get those bragging rights? So I think it's interesting. We call the Bama versus Oklahoma game the Jalen Hurts Bowl. So that's going to be an interesting new rivalry. I mentioned us playing Texas this year as well as this past year. But another part of the schedule that I think goes unnoticed is great point right here. Jalen is pulling for Bama. We know that Jalen is rolling with the tide. But shouts out to Jalen. But another thing about the SEC schedule, I'm talking about Oklahoma, I'm talking about the 12-team playoffs. If you look, Alabama still has the strength of schedule, in my opinion, because Alabama, if you look at that 2024 schedule, Alabama we play Western Kentucky, South Florida at home. You know, we played them this year on the road in Tampa, Florida, I believe. But listen, we play at Wisconsin, and I want to circle that Wisconsin game because that's what we do here at Football University. We find ways to bring it back to Alabama. Listen, playing that Wisconsin game is huge for Alabama as far as getting into the 12-team playoffs, separating themselves from them schedule, being able going out and playing quality Power 5 opponents. Noticing in the 2024 schedules, you're not seeing a lot of directional schools, at least from Alabama's perspective. And I feel like, to my first point, that's what separates the University of Alabama for being the standard, as Justin Riley, Bama Standard says. Listen, I do think Bama playing that Wisconsin game, going up to Wisconsin, playing in Madison, I think that's a good look for Alabama, playing a Big Ten opponent. I think that, as well as the, you know, tough SEC schedule, Alabama's kind of already forward-thinking, innovative when it comes to scheduling, you know, making sure that they're kind of staying ahead of the curve when it comes to the scheduling, making sure they're ahead of the other teams. And listen, playing at Wisconsin, playing a Big Ten opponent, I think that shows that Alabama is already ahead of the pack when it comes to getting used to playing, you know, that 12-team playoff in 2024, because we know 1 through 4 is probably going to have a bye week. But 5 through 12 is probably going to have to play a home and home. Maybe if Alabama's not in the top 4, maybe we go play at Ohio State in Columbus, or Ohio State comes to Tuscaloosa, or Alabama USC comes to Tuscaloosa. That can be kind of dynamic. So I think Alabama is leading the way when it comes to being innovative, with their scheduling. Coach Saban, Greg Byrne, they always do a great job. So I want to plug at that Wisconsin Big Ten matchup. So let's go to the student section while we are rolling. Stephen Hicks says, Bama beating everybody. Want some? Come get some. Stephen Hicks says, roll tide, rise up. Listen, so the schedule release, and to me, it just shows, going back to Alabama, roll tide and rise up. Listen, to me, the SEC is showing you why Alabama is the premier school, looking by their schedule. Having to play, we lose the Mississippi schools, we lose Ole Miss, we lose Mississippi State, but we gain South Carolina, who's emerging SEC East team. We gain Georgia. Obviously, we gained Vanderbilt, but we gained Oklahoma, and we still keep Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU. To me, that shows that Alabama separates themselves from the scheduling perspective. This is what we do here at Football University. We get a lot of Georgia fans, Bulldog fans, and it brings me up to my next point. Listen, Alabama, and I have nothing against Georgia. They are, the 2-time national championships. But listen, I still feel like the SEC kind of coddles Georgia a little bit. Like, if you look at them compared to Alabama, I feel like Alabama always has to go through a tougher road in SEC. And Georgia, like, they still haven't played in College Station. Like, what is the SEC holding up for Georgia going to College Station? Georgia still, their schedule compared to ours looks a little different. They still play Kentucky. They still play, they don't play Vanderbilt, but they pick up Ole Miss, Mississippi State, our former schools. So I just think that's interesting. They pick up Mississippi State. They still play Auburn. They got a neutral site game. I still feel like the SEC still makes their schedule a little bit easier for Georgia. They got the Texas game. I give them that. But Kentucky, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, I feel like that's nothing. I'm looking around the SEC. Nobody tends – I don't know who has the second toughest schedule, but I still think compared to Alabama, Alabama still has the toughest road, in my opinion. I feel like they may be, kind of coddle Georgia a little bit. So give me your thoughts in the student section. Listen, Jeff Stapleton says, Nick Saban wants all the smoke. In so many words, he's always says, bring it. And I think how Coach Saban is, being an ultimate competitor, wanting to go through the best. It brings me up to my next point, to your point, Jeff Stapleton, which is a magnificent point, that to me, to my point, that this separates Alabama. Alabama plays the hardest schedule. A great quote, the harder the road, the sweeter the victory. Well, if that's the case, well, sweet home Alabama, we want to, win a national championship, and we don't want to make excuses. To your point, Coach Saban, Alabama, we want the smoke. Like, we want to go through this tough road because it's the SEC, and historically, Alabama has always had to go through that tough road to get through Atlanta and win a national championship. So I think that's what makes Alabama so unique, and I think that helps separate Alabama from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, you look at this, Coach Saban, you already the top brand. The players want to play at the best, and they want to play the best competition where they know they're getting their A game. You look at Alabama's schedule. I mean, you look at the recruits to 2024 to 2025. Why wouldn't you want to come play at Alabama and look at that schedule? I mean, Alabama's got, South Carolina, Georgia, it's going to be a big game. We still retain Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee. So, those are going to be big games. Listen, Alabama is blockbuster football. when it comes to the SEC. So listen, if you're a recruit, why wouldn't you want to come play in the tie? You're going to be on all the big games. Everybody's going to be looking at you, and you play all the toughest schedules. So I think, to me, that further separates Alabama from all the other schools, even from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, you look at Georgia, yeah, they're good. And you look at some of the other schools, Kentucky's and Florida's, like they have a schedule, but it's nothing like Bama's schedule. I feel like all the other schools are still looking up to Alabama and Alabama's schedule because Alabama is the standard. So let's pause right there. Y'all are going crazy in the student section. They said boo Georgia. Shots fired early. Georgia has it easy. I mean, to your point, I feel like the SEC, I don't know what it is. I don't know if I feel like I don't know why Georgia still hasn't been to College Station. Texas A&M has been the SEC so long. Like, why haven't they been to College Station? I don't know, but I don't know. I still think it is what it is. So let's pause right here. Y'all are going in. They love Georgia. They hate us. People always hate on Alabama. Listen, to your point, they love to hate Alabama because they want to be Alabama. At the end of the day, the historic program, we lead the SEC in titles. We have the tradition. We have Coach Saban, Bear Bryant. Historically, Alabama has been the premier college football program in the South, in the deep South. We know how it is down here in the heart of Dixie or Dixieland Delight, whatever you want to say. It is the heart of the South in Alabama. SEC football, this is what we do. So, yeah, y'all are going in. Let's get some of these comments fired off. Georgia's well rested most of the season comparison. No comparison to Bama's schedule. I mean, I feel like Bama's schedule is on another pedestal when it comes to the SEC because the SEC officers know Alabama football is what pays the bill. And I mentioned earlier, listen, the Mississippi schools do not play Alabama. And it got me thinking, I think they take a hit economically, ticket-wise, not playing Alabama because the Alabama game, sells out. It's the biggest game of the year for most SEC schools. They bring their A game. They want to play Alabama because Alabama historically is that school. So, listen, I think the Mississippi State and Ole Miss, I think they take a hit. You look at Lane Kiffin, he just acquired Pete Golden. He doesn't have that big game versus Alabama in 2024. So, they probably, like, man, I wish we could play Bama, to really help our program. A lot of programs use playing against Alabama to help their program, to build their program. So I think the Mississippi State, Ole Miss schools kind of take a ding not being able to play Alabama. But the schools on the flip side, the schools that do play Alabama, Alabama and Georgia coming from Athens to Tuscaloosa, that's going to be a big game. Alabama versus Oklahoma, I said the Jalen Hurts Bowl, that's going to be a big game. Obviously, Alabama, South Carolina, Shane Beamer, that's going to be a big game. I mean, Alabama basically are playing the SEC East best teams, while Georgia, they really didn't get the top SEC West teams. But listen, we're not complaining because that's how we want it. We like going through that fire. To me, that's what makes you better. But listen, this is how it is. I'm just bringing it out there, putting out there comparatively to Alabama, looking at other SEC school schedules. No comparison as compared to Bama's schedule. So, listen, Bama still plays the top 3 SEC East teams. Obviously, we're going to play Tennessee. Josh Heupel, high-power offense. Nico Limavela probably be there next year. Milton probably be gone. Alabama possibly. Julius Sayre going to be competing for the starting position. He's an up-and-coming quarterback that you need to keep an eye on. I'm just saying. But, yeah, that 2024, listen, we play Tennessee. We play Georgia. And we play South Carolina. Alabama acquired the SEC East top 3 schools. So it is what it is. That's what's going to make us better. I think that's what's going to separate us on the field, in recruiting, and the schedule-wise. Our type of mentality, our type of demeanor, being the top dog, but always having to go out there and prove yourself for a long season. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. So let's stay in the student section. Y'all are rolling. Bama's one of the club security guards don't mess with. We are dangerous even in the down year. You know, Alabama lost 2 games last year, and it was to Alabama standards, you know, it was a down year. So, but listen, Alabama's, to our point, Bama's still the biggest brand. Everybody, the college football world circles around Alabama. But that's what we do here at Football University. We talk everything. Listen, a lot more shots fired at Georgia. You said Georgia plays a cupcake schedule, thrive all season. I bet they play top teams during the season. Kirby asked for extra strip Mino pills. Listen, I don't know about the extra strip Mino pills, but, you know, Kirby, you know, he does a good job at his program down there in Athens, Georgia. You know, say what you wanted to say, but, you know, they're able to win. They won the SEC this past year, and they won back-to-back national championships. But their schedule is, to your point, cupcake-ish, you know, compared to Bama's. Bama has a tougher schedule, so for sure. So let's stay in the student section. Oh, going back to the Jalen Hurts Bowl, let's show this one right here. In the words of Jalen, we aren't walking through the fire just to smell the smoke this season. Comment of the night. I love it. Listen, Bama's walking through the fire. You know, we're walking, playing against, obviously, the Iron Bowl, Georgia, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Tennessee, LSU, South Carolina. Listen, Alabama's going through a lot of top 12, top 10 teams on their schedule, and we want to go through the fire as Jalen Hurts. We don't want to go through there just to smell the smoke. We want to come out refined and that much better, and hopefully holding up that trophy at the end of the year. So great comment. Let's stay in the student section. I love the student section. Y'all keep it going. Let's go. I'm gonna have to. Georgia gonna get. Oh my goodness! You said Georgia gonna get the hands put on when they play Georgia State School. Oh my goodness! Y'all are on. Listen, Stephen Hicks got a great comment. He says, Tennessee, LSU, and Auburn is a sweat. We've been beating those for years. Listen, but we got to come with it. You know, Tennessee, LSU beat us last year. Brian Kelly, Jay Daniels. I told you, I think this year the SEC West is going to come down to Alabama, LSU. I feel like when Alabama and LSU are kind of going at it with each other, that separates the SEC West, and that kind of makes the SEC West how it should be. I think, especially since Saban's been there historically, the Alabama-LSU game means so much. Whoever wins that usually is going to Atlanta to represent the SEC West. So we got to take care of LSU. That's, to me, I think that's the biggest game always on the calendar. And, you know, Tennessee game is just that bitter rivalry that you do not like anything orange. You know, the third Saturday in October, Bama, LSU, the cigars. We don't like anything Tennessee. It's just a bitter rivalry. And, you know, I said this again here at Football University because that's what we do. Listen, Bama lost last year, and I feel like Tennessee poured salt on the wounds by playing Dixieland Delight, popping the fireworks, all that good stuff. You know, controversial game. Calls should have went where we still lost the game. But listen, gloves are off. We owe you. You look at how Tennessee played Alabama basketball when we went up there. It was dirty, physical. I mean, I feel like since Tennessee has won this game, it has really brought a type of, you know, more confidence for the Tennessee faithful up there in Knoxville. So we owe them. And I think Saban and the team is ready and motivated. And always 24/7, your in-state rivalry, Auburn, is always 24/7. No, you that's one game you're gonna have to always throw out the record book because Auburn, Alabama, the Iron Bowl doesn't get any better than that. So we got a couple Roll Tide Rise Up. Shouts out to the Falcons fans in here. So let's stay in the student section. Y'all are rolling. Oh man, Edward said Texas is gonna be battling with Missouri again for mid-level talent. Listen, I know it sounds exciting Texas and Oklahoma. I'm talking to you out in Texas and Oklahoma. You're probably thinking, oh, the Big 12, they haven't been making money. Texas probably was looking at A&M, Texas A&M in College Station ever since they made the jump to the SEC. The past 4 or 5 years, 6 years, ever since Texas A&M moved to the SEC, in the state of Texas, Texas A&M kind of have been the bigger dog because they don't play that rivalry game, and Texas A&M carrying the SEC banner, I think made Texas a little bit jealous. And then Texas was looking at the Big 12. They're looking at the SEC, how they generate so much revenue, how the SEC model, the commissioner, Sankey, how they structure schools getting paid and TV deals. And they're like, wow, if we do have the opportunity to get to the SEC, let's do it. And to Texas and Oklahoma, we're glad to have you in the SEC. Now come get this work. Like, I think you're no longer playing Kansas, going to Manhattan, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. This is no longer that. You're playing SEC 8-game schedule, and you're going to have to come with it. So welcome to the SEC. Y'all. I mean, listen, this is no joke. This is no joke. Get ready for this chicken. I know one thing. Bama is coming. Any thoughts? Great comment here. Any thoughts on recruiting impacts once Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC? Obviously, you look at Texas, Steve Sarkisian, you look at the bond, the familiarity with Coach Saban. You look at Oklahoma, Brett Venables, them coming from, I do think they have benefits to recruiting coming to the SEC. But, at the end of the day, I still think that benefits Alabama even more so, because the more they expand the SEC footprint, I think the bigger the SEC becomes. I think the bigger Alabama becomes, because Alabama is not only expanding their footprint, but they get to be dominant in other areas. And so I still think having Texas and Oklahoma, yeah, you're going to have some effect. But I think if Alabama continues to be dominant, I think it's going to really help Alabama's brand, because, listen, like I mentioned earlier, Bama is the standard. We have the toughest schedule. We sell the must-see TV games. Everybody's watching Alabama when it comes to college football. So great point right there. Great point right here. We don't have Bob or Pete Golden calling anymore. I mean, thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. We don't have them on the field no more anymore. Oh man, that was just Miss is gonna be set a record this year with most real rights scoring on them. Listen, having Pete Golden as your defensive coordinator, listen, I'm just glad we got Tommy Reese and Kevin Steele. Listen, Kevin Steele brings a different type of mentality. He brings more of a physical, energetic, enthusiastic type of mentality. Everybody's gonna know what they're gonna do. We're going to have a more of a hit you in the mouth type of approach on the defensive end, getting the ball out. What you're accustomed to seeing the former Alabama teams on the defensive end, that's what you're going to see with Steele at the defensive coordinator. And as always, Tommy Reese, I think he's going to run the ball. I think it's going to look a little bit like Malcolm Wayne-ish, maybe a little Malcolm Wayne / Kiffin, maybe with a little bit of methodical approach of a Sark. So that's how I think Tommy Reese is going to offensive game plan is going to work, because the constant thing is going to be running the ball, and we're going to be able to get the ball to our playmakers, whether that's Malik Vincent, Kendrick Law, Bond, Prentice, Brooks. I mean, the list goes on. All the tight ends. It's going to be exciting. We're going to be ready to roll. Listen, let's stay in the student section. Let's say my guy, Nick Saban Jr. Shouts out to Nick Saban Jr., Special Teams Podcast. He does a great job. He says Texas and Oklahoma barely can win the conference they are in now. Yeah, I mean, I agree. This is no longer, as my previous point, dear Texas and Oklahoma, this is no longer the Big 12. You wanted the SEC. Now you're getting the SEC smoke. You're getting it week in and week out, and we're going to be glad to come in there and welcome you, give you your welcoming party. I know Alabama is. I mean, Texas coming to Tuscaloosa this year is going to be, night game, in Tuscaloosa. Man, Bama is going to be ready. They're going to be, listen, it's going to be crazy. So, listen, this is no longer going to Norman. This is no longer going to play a neutral site game in Norman. No, you're coming home in the tough SEC road game. So, Oklahoma, Texas, we welcome you to the SEC. So, yeah. Oh, this is a great point. Talking about the SEC West, let's talk about LSU. And listen, Van Edwards says LSU gonna be in trouble when they can't run the ball on no more against us. Yeah, I think, to our points earlier, talking about a difference between a Pete Golden and a Kevin Steele-led defense. I think, listen, Alabama's going to get back to stopping the run. I think we're going to be rushing a lot of 4-man fronts, 5-man fronts. I feel like what Golden lacked was, didn't know how to prepare, didn't know how to utilize his talent, and didn't know how to stop offenses. And he didn't know how to make adjustments. I feel like Kevin Steele has the experience, the mindset. He knows how to utilize all this talent that we have, especially all this physical. He's going to develop them physically. You look at him, led with the Robert Balla at the linebackers coach, with all the talented linebackers that we have, Ja'Kai Campbell, Lawson, Marshall, Justin Jefferson, who I call Weapon X. I mean, we're going to have more of a physicality approach where we're putting pressure on these offenses and not trying to stop it in the run, but we will stop the run. You look at Freddie Roach and the defensive line. I think the D linemen are going to be schemed correctly. That way we're physical up front. We're able to cause havoc in the backfield, whether it's tackle for losses or stopping the run or putting pressure with our front four. Now, edge rushers, you're looking at Dallas Turner. I think Dallas Turner needs to have 14 to 20 sacks this year, easily double digits. And if he gets anything over 15, I think he's putting himself as to be a top draft pick next year. So I think the biggest thing with Tommy Steele, he's going to let our defense hunt. He's going to build dogs, and they're going to go out there and go hunt on the defensive end and knock some heads off. So that's the difference for us. But the LSU game is going to be important. 6-0 says, great point. Nick Saban Jr. Roll Tide, rise up. Bama, listen. Stephen Hicks says, listen, Bama's going to give the Shorthorns a welcome to the SEC. Trust and believe. Listen, that night in Tuscaloosa, whew, man, it is going to – I think Alabama's going to be in the crimson home. Oh, it's going to be in Tuscaloosa, night game. Listen, this nighttime is the right time. We will come ready to we're going to be wearing crimson, but we're going to try to make Texas bleed crimson. We're going to try to lay it on them for 4 quarters in Tuscaloosa. Man, y'all are rolling. That's why I love the student section. Y'all are y'all are rolling. So let's I gotta give shout out to Van Edwards talking about the cheetah package. You said, listen, Toto ran away from everything. I mean, it is what it is. Sorry, guys. It is what it is. So, man, talking about the cheetah package, as Brian Green says, it's more like the cheetah package. Listen, that cheetah package looked good versus A&M, but it's like we just didn't have a package our base package wasn't good enough. Our base packages need to be so dynamic where we just let the guys go hunt and be physical. So, great point right here. We know Coach Saban will do this. Coach Saban took over the defense versus the Kansas City game. Yeah, I think Coach Saban he was not going to let Bryce Young and Will Anderson go out with the loss in that bowl game. And I think he was, he got rid of some players before in the portal, before the bowl practice even started. And I think he already had in his mind he was not going to let Pete Golden and Bill O'Brien calls Will Anderson and Bryce Young their last game as a big dominant victory versus Kansas State. So to your point, I do think Coach Saban called the defense and made sure that Pete Golden didn't mess it up. So that's what you got to do when you got a Pete Golden. So yeah, let's let's get to my next topic. We discussed some of everything. We discussed the SEC schedule. We discussed LSU, Georgia's schedule. We talked about Oklahoma, the Jalen Hurts Bowl. So I want to get to some things that I wanted to discuss. Talking about Alabama's football team, specifically Coach Saban. I want to discuss, Coach Saban, i.e., I mentioned earlier last week's show that Coach Saban, he was lobbying legislators with Sankey, Greg Byrne, Woodward, LSU's athletic director, Brian Kelly, meeting with State Senator Britt on some NIL legislation. And this week, Coach Saban did bring out some news. He did an interview with Joel Klatt, and we know Joel Klatt. He's not the biggest Bama, supporter, in my opinion. He's to me, he's a big Bama hater. But, Coach Saban loves a good media time, and he had some interesting comments about NIL. Coach Saban, I think he's more of an innovative leader. But before I get to the NIL comments, Coach Saban has some interesting college football playoff comments. And I mean, to me, his best quotes while doing this on the Joe Klatt show, he says, his thoughts on the college football system. He says, but do you really get the best teams? And we're still in the 4-team playoff this year. And he said, did we really get the best teams when they told me, i.e. Vegas, we will be favored 3 out of the 4 teams that got in the playoffs? And, Saban's like, why aren't we in the playoffs? And if you're looking back, Saban's got a good point. Saban's always going to be controversial. Some people are going to say, oh, what is he talking about? You got the Bama haters, they want to say be critical and critique. But I think he makes a valid point. I've said this here at Football University. If Georgia, congratulations, they won a national championship, but they did not have to play Alabama, so they were able to not play Bama. But I feel like that helped them, because if Alabama was the only closest team that could match up with them talent for 4 quarters and probably have the advantage. If you look at the quarterback position, i.e. Bryce Young, Will Anderson, now where we would have to stay focused, Coach Saban would have to stay on Pete Golden and Bill O'Brien. But I still think, Alabama, Bryce, Will losing that national championship up there in Indianapolis, in the waning moments, offense couldn't get going. I think if they would have had the opportunity to play Georgia in the playoffs, I think they would have beat Georgia. That's just my opinion. Have the revenge factor. I think Bama would have beat Georgia, but we still had Pete Golden and Bill O'Brien. So you never know. But Georgia was rolling. But, I do, to Coach Saban's point, Bama would have been favored over TCU probably by 14, 15 points at least. Bama probably would have been a 6.7-point favorite over Michigan. Bama probably would have been a 6.7-point favorite over Ohio State. Now, Georgia probably would have been a 2-point favorite. Georgia might have got the odds initially, but I think the closer they would have got to the game, the Georgia's numbers would have shortened down and got, smaller and smaller, where the odds probably tilted into Alabama, especially Alabama getting rested. Listen, I think Alabama, I'm just being honest. So I want to talk about Saban's comments. I think Saban was spot on. And back to my original point about Saban, I think, when it comes to NIL, I think he's always trying to be the innovative leader, making sure he's kind of getting ahead of it. And when they're discussing NFL, NIL, we know it changed the recruiting landscape, how to deal with young athletes. And he says, listen, we're giving players scholarships and we're creating NIL opportunities, but what's their commitment? Talking about the players. And he's like, there's no place in the world where you don't have a contract, and you got to receive benefits. So he's still saying you still need some type of contract because it's such a transactional business world dealing with money and commitment. I think Coach Saban is on the he's on the right wavelength when it comes to this decision. I do think we need some type of contract for the players. I think you protect the school as well as the players, making sure they're able to have the commitment and the NIL. I think you can kind of restructure, rebrand it. Me being a former player, I think, this is just my thoughts here at Football University, all the NCAA, NIL ideas. I think you should do it in a trust fund. That way the players, when they leave, they can have money while they're on campus, but making sure that they have money when they graduate. I will incentivize it where if they graduate with 3.5 years with their bachelor's, they get more money, or if they graduate with a master's in 4, they get more money, or they stay committed with the school. They still keep their full value of NIL. If they transfer, they got to start back to zero. So I think you can kind of work it out where you're protecting the institution as well as the player. And I think that's some of the ideas that Coach Saban is trying to be at the forefront for. So when it comes to NIL, so let's pause right here and let's go to the student section. We're not. Listen, great point. We're not putting the committee hands this year. No, we're not, Stephen Hicks. Like I said, we're not putting in this committee hands. I know I thought Bama should have been in it, but, they wanted TCU. Even though they lost to Kansas State, it is what it is. When you have so much Bama hate and because people know in the back of their mind, if Bama gets in, it's a wrap. And Bama coming in at the number 4 spot where we're kind of the underdog and we kind of have a play with a chip on our shoulder. Yeah, they knew in the back of their heads, if Bama gets in, they're going to win it. So let's not put them in. So it is what it is. But like to your point, Stephen Hicks, I think Coach Saban, Kevin Steele, Tommy Reese, the talent that we have, they're not going to put it in the committee's hands. William Bryant makes a great point. He says, I wanted the committee to learn from their mistakes last year. They probably did it. It's just how the committee is, but it is what it is. Listen, Jeff Saban says Saban would have taken over play calling if we played a national championship against Georgia. Yeah, I don't think Coach Saban would allow Alabama to lose that game, especially you look at Will Anderson, Bryce Young's ultra talented young men, but great character. For them to come back despite them playing that last game, being lottery picks, despite not winning that championship, but coming back and wanting to finish what you started, that shows a lot of character. And I don't think Coach Saban, how he's such a player, how those guys were such leaders, I don't think he would have let them go out not winning that national championship. So Coach Saban most definitely would have took over play calling in the national championship game versus Georgia. That way we can win. And I think Bama had the motivation to get them over the hump versus Georgia with that revenge factor. I think offensively, if Pete Golden was in his bag, I think we can really affect their defense. Ringo, I don't think they can cover our offensive guys. Now we would have had to stop, Brock Bowers, their tight ends, but I think we match up well with them. When you look at a Brian Branch, a Jordan Battle, I think those guys on the back end match up with them. Now we would have to stop the run, but I think if we can, Coach Saban calling defense, we would have stopped Georgia at least for. And I think offensively, Bill O'Brien would have to be in his bag, and Coach Saban would stay on him to make sure we beat the brakes off of them. That's just my 2 pence. But this is all hypothetical. This didn't happen. But I'm just saying here at Football University, this is just my thoughts. But it is what it is. It's what we talk about at Football University. So it didn't happen. So kudos to Georgia. So let's stay right here. Stephen Hicks says our defense is bringing the pain back. Yeah, Jeff Stapleton. Our defense is bringing the pain back with Coach Steele. Listen, TCU. They were. To me, TCU, I get they won, especially when they beat Michigan. I think everybody was like, what is going on with Michigan? We were all sitting there in shock and awe, and Harbaugh just looking, just getting destroyed again. But then TCU, the way they played in the national championship game, losing by like 60 or 75 some points to Georgia. I know at least 4 or 5 SEC teams that would have gave Georgia a tougher game competitive-wise than TCU. I think obviously Bama. I think Tennessee presents. I still think Georgia would have beat Tennessee. I think South Carolina would have been a different type of team. I think Tennessee just being an SEC. I think LSU, even though they played in the SEC championship game, I still think they would have gave them a more competitive game. But the team that Georgia did not want to play was Alabama. Alabama just did not make it. So it is what it is. Hopefully Alabama gets to the SEC championship this year and Georgia gets to the SEC championship this year. And we finally duke it out in Atlanta. So that's all I care about. So great point right here. 6-0 says, please give us your take on Jamil Burroughs' status and what impact discipline will it be on our defense. I do think Jamil Burroughs is a talented guy. I have heard some things about him, possibly not being with the team, but I think it was internally happened within the team, maybe some staff, things like that. We know Coach Saban likes to handle things internally. So hopefully Jamil Burroughs, he's able to right his wrongs and don't mess up this opportunity. Like, you're a young guy, and I know we might make mistakes, but listen, at the end of the day, it's about getting your education. Like, use this opportunity, to propel yourself in life. Make sure you're doing the best in the classroom, getting your degrees, because those things are what's going to matter beyond football. You're setting a brand. You're putting your resume out there for future jobs, whatever career you're studying. So hopefully you right your wrongs and you're able to be, put that energy on the defensive line and go and stop these abundant offenses and go and stop these, get to the quarterback. So I know Coach Saban's going to probably handle it internally, but I think Jamil Burroughs is talented, and I think he can help our D-line. But hopefully he gets it, the maturity, the mindset to channel this energy to the football field. That way he's dominant on and off the field, and he can, maximize his potential as a student athlete. So great point right there, 6-0. I love this comment right here. Jeff Stapleton says, ESPN hates Alabama. I get it. I think most of college football, they have a love-hate relationship with Alabama, especially in the SEC. Everybody says they love the SEC, but if Alabama's winning, Auburn doesn't like Alabama. Georgia's, they don't like Bama. We know LSU's not going to pull for Bama. So Alabama, everybody says they love the SEC, but Alabama's kind of in their own universe where everybody loves the SEC except for Alabama, if that makes sense. So, but ESPN, we know ESPN, ABC have the big TV deal with the SEC network, where, we no longer will be on CBS, I believe, starting in 2024. So that's going to be a different shift from TV style. We won't have no more Gary Danielson. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Vern Lunk was retired. But yeah, Gary, it is what it is, but no more CBS, but we'll be on ABC, ESPN. And as much as, to your point, just say the ESPN might hate us, they love those ratings. ABC loves those ratings that Alabama brings. So they always trying to get those Alabama games, and if it's not the CBS SEC games. So, but to your point, listen, ABC, they're going to be listening. They're going to want to cover the Georgia Bama game, the Georgia Bama game, Bama LSU, probably the Iron Bowl, definitely probably the South Carolina game. That's probably maybe be on ESPN. Depends on how good they're rolling. Um, Wisconsin game is going to be a big game. Who else did I say? Probably South U.S. South Florida playing them in Tuscaloosa. That'll probably be on ESPN. Tennessee game. I mean, all those big games that would be CBS games are probably going to be ABC kickoffs for Alabama. So it's going to be unique to see Alabama on ABC, ESPN. So great comment right there, Jeff Stapleton. Let's get to the I see a lot of Feinbaum talk. We know, like I said, I mean, love or hate Feinbaum, he is the voice of the South. He is what it is. But I told people, I know people think, living in the state of Alabama, everybody thinks Feinbaum is, hates Alabama, or most SEC fans think he's a fan of Alabama. I think Feinbaum, with Tennessee winning this year, I think he showed his true colors that he's all in, because he is a Tennessee Vol alum, but he's all in on the Vols, and he's really not been pro Bama or Coach Saban with a lot of his takes. So, to your point, Feinbaum is not on Bama's side. So I think he goes in that category with Joel Klatt and David Pollack and all those guys who don't like Alabama. Oh man, I just want Bama to win the Natty. That's the only thing I care about. So, Van Elwer said he is the voice of Tennessee. He is the voice of Tennessee, and but nobody's talking about Tennessee. Tennessee, everybody still talks about Alabama. So he might be the voice of Tennessee, but he got Alabama's what pays the bills, to my point earlier. So Alabama is college football. So yeah, great point. So I got a few more comments that I want to discuss before I get and I'm gonna shift gears to the NFL, because I did discuss this last week. But I want to discuss, I know we're talking about Joel Klatt and Fox big noon kickoffs interview with Nick Saban. Big news, and we got to talk about this guy because he's a former Heisman winner. Mark Ingram, he's possibly contemplating retirement. And we know Reggie Bush and Fox Sports I think they bought each other out. He's no longer will be coming back to Fox Sports, and that's opening up a vacancy. And rumors have circulated that Mark Ingram could possibly fill that void. And that got me thinking, will that mean that, possibly Fox, picks up more SEC games? And maybe having an SEC guy, maybe that could be a hint to that. So, I mean, shouts out to Mark Ingram. I mean, historic career, winning the Heisman at Alabama, being a first-round draft pick for the Saints, being in the Saints Hall of Fame, big trust when he was with Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens with that run. So, listen, I'm pulling for Mark Ingram. And speaking of the NFL, I want to pause. Talk about Tua Tagovailoa, man. Tua is looking thicker, man. He's a bigger guy. I mean, he's got new ink. He's from Hawaii. He's big on the Samoan culture. In the cultures of them and his culture and Samoan culture. So it looks like he's got more ink. So I'm interested to see this new Tua. And listen, I think Tua and the Miami Dolphins, I think to Alabama, I said Alabama versus Oklahoma is the Jalen Hurts Bowl, and I still think we're going to have an Alabama Super Bowl. If the Eagles with Jalen Hurts, Eagles fly, make it, and the Miami Dolphins, that could be my Super Bowl kind of favorites right now. So I wanted to discuss Tua Tagovailoa, how he's got new ink and he's looking a bit bigger. Also, I mentioned Bryce Young, and we know I got a lot of Falcons fans out there. Rise up to all the Falcons fans out there. And I know Bryce Young, the Carolina Panthers, they're coming with like a mini series about the Bryce Young draft, and I saw clips of it. Scott Fitterer, the owner, all of those, the Teppers, making the phone call. They're documenting the journey. And interesting fact, when Bryce was drafted, they flew him, from Kansas City to Charlotte the next day. And he had his opening press conference. And as he's walking the field with Frank Wright, they are discussing the number 2 pick, and they're like, "How do you feel about Mingo, the receiver out Ole Miss?" And he's like, "I love that guy." And so that's immediately who they drafted in the second round, helping Bryce Young have a young, talented receiver to kind of build that rapport with as he grow as a rookie, building that rapport, adding to that receiver room. They got DJ Shark, Adam Thielen, Terrence Marshall. So now you add a Mingo with the offensive scheme. Listen, rise up, Falcons fans. Don't sleep on the Panthers. I know, shouts out to the Falcons fans, but I know y'all don't want to hear that. But I'm a Bryce Young fan here at Football University. I'm a huge Bryce Young fan. So I discussed it. Mark Ingram, Bryce, Tua, and I want to discuss. I want to shift to Alabama football. Obviously, as we wind it down, and I just want to talk about how, we just had the NBA playoffs. Nikola Jokic, the Denver Nuggets, basically just almost just did a gentleman's sweep almost versus the Miami Heat. And it got me thinking that, Coach Saban's got to be dominant. I said we can draw from the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic. He's the greatest in basketball right now, the Serbian sensation. But he's the big man. He's bringing back the big man. I still think Alabama's football needs to be like the Denver Nuggets and rely on our big men out here, our offensive line, and continue to, be consistent with Jokic. We need to be consistent with our running game, feeding our running backs, feeding Jason McClellan, feeding Jan Miller, feeding Roydell Williams, feeding Justice Haynes, feeding Richard Young. So, that's my 2 cents from the Denver Nuggets. And I know I talk about Coach Saban, but I know Coach Saban is the ultimate competitor. But Mike Malone, listen, the head coach from the Denver Nuggets, he was able to make adjustments, and he was able to just put it on the Miami Heat, even though he was going up against Eric Spoelstra. So I think Coach Saban's got to get back to being that guy on the coaching end, and that's something he can learn from Mike Malone. So I wanted to stop right there. So let's stay in the student section before we wind it down. Stephen Hicks says, listen, just know Saban goes to midfield and shakes hand and says, Kirby, I'm your father. Listen, that Georgia game is going to be a big game. But like I said, I think Alabama, we need to win all games, but it's a long season winning the 12-team playoffs. And I think it's important that we finish number 1 more so than anything, and that we hold up that trophy. Hopefully, Coach Saban not only wins the championship this year, and he wins it next year. So when he does meet him next year, he'll have, he'll be tied up 2-2 with Kirby. So it's going to be interesting. So Spencer says, brings up a great point. Everyone, please hit that like button. Matt's doing a great job. Thank you. Shouts out to the student section. Y'all are doing a great job. Spencer, Stephen Hicks, Lori Cadell, Nick Saban Jr., Van Edwards, 6-0, Linda P., Jeff Stapleton. I mean, student section, y'all always do a magnificent job, whether it's, in the comments, throwing shots. Y'all just do a great job. So let's stay in the student section. Stephen Hicks, fire them off, rapid fire. Roll Tide, Roll, Spencer. Joe Stapleton says, Saban's got to come and score and don't look back. Second game, stomp Texas. Let's make a statement. Yeah, I keep talking about that Texas game. But it's important that we take care of, Middle Tennessee State weekend 1. It's going to be interesting to see how we iron things out from a quarterback perspective, who kind of takes over the reins. And, I know we're probably vanilla game plan wise, but either way, we are looking to make a statement versus Texas that second week in Tuscaloosa under the lights. So So let's fire off great comments here. RTR Spencer. Van Edwards says RTR. Listen, Flat Rock legend, the Spencer icon, Alabama legend, Roll Tide Roll. So listen, speaking of legends, student sections, y'all are the legends. William Bryant, Spencer 60. Listen, shouts out to the student section because y'all are what makes the show so much engaging, such more interactive. And that's what makes football university special. So we're going to end it right here. Join us next week for another episode of Football University. Same time, same place, same channel here at CTS Sports Room. Call somebody, let them know. Bring all your football fanatics to this show. I think we do a great job. But in the meantime, have a great week, and I'll see you next week here at Football University. Peace.